Welcome to another edition of Don Hammond's Arlington Weekly News. Once again, I'm doing a variety of different character voices until someone complains. Here's the lineup for this week. The news, of course, Community Bulletin Board, and 55 Plus News. That's the show. Now here's the social media reminder. You can watch us on YouTube at Arlington Weekly News and the number 1, also on Facebook, and you can listen on the radio at WERA 96.7 FM. We don't have any more information about the recently suspended town hall meetings, but we do have plenty of other news. Here it is.
As of Sunday evening, September 13th, reports show the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Arlington had exceeded 3,700. Regular viewers will note the continuing increase in our reported numbers. Elsewhere, the Arlington County Board has voted to ban guns in county buildings, parks, and at certain special events. The Virginia General Assembly's recent change of legislation allowed localities to adopt prohibitions on firearms, and the board took the action on Saturday, September 12th. The 40 people who spoke at the meeting were divided in their opinions. Some were in favor of the ban, while others opposed it. One opposition speaker was independent county board candidate Audrey Clement, who also expressed her views in an email, which we quote. "I'm afraid that the current county board, led by my opponent, Libby Garvey, is endangering the citizens it has sworn to protect. It adopted a blanket gun ban on county property and county-sponsored events, thus assuring that future targets of gun violence are unable to defend themselves on public property. The issue isn't dead, as gun rights advocates have vowed to challenge the gun ban in court." Among those who favored the ordinance was Navy veteran and former congressional candidate Bruce Shuttleworth, who said, "We need to keep our weapons of war out of our places of peace." Mr. Shuttleworth also noted that he had more experience handling weapons, from sidearms to grenade launchers, than anyone else at the meeting.
Here are some of the details of the ordinance. The ordinance includes a number of exceptions. Those allowed to carry guns include active duty military, sworn and retired law enforcement, and certain private security personnel. The county board also allocated $110,000 to provide signage to inform gun permit owners where guns are to be prohibited and where they can and cannot carry their weapons. In addition, the ordinance will apply only to places that are clearly marked. A county press release was even more specific, and we quote, "The Arlington County Board voted unanimously to adopt a firearms ordinance banning guns in county government buildings and parks and at designated special events that require a county permit. The restrictions will apply where the county has posted notice at entrances to buildings, parks, recreation and community centers, and at entrances to events." The board's action was authorized under a state law signed by Governor Ralph Northam in April 2020 that allows localities to set their own rules on the presence of firearms in public. In addition, the release mentioned 2 changes to the originally proposed ordinance. One change clarified that the ordinance would apply only in areas that were clearly marked, so that gun permit holders would know easily where guns are prohibited and where they can and cannot carry their weapons. The second change was to include an exception for special events, so that organizers can supply their own security in public areas during their event. That security would be approved by Arlington County as part of the special events permits process.
Meanwhile, the Arlington branch of the NAACP had recently called for a change to be made to Arlington County's official logo. The present logo, along with its flag, depicts Arlington House, the county's namesake that sits atop a hill in Arlington National Cemetery. The house was built by enslaved persons in the early 1800s on the orders of George Washington Parke Custis, George Washington's adopted son. The house was later home to Confederate General Robert E. Lee, who never actually owned the property, but who married into the slave-owning Custis family before the property was seized by the federal government during the Civil War and ultimately turned into the nation's most hallowed military cemetery. County board members have voiced their agreement that a change should be made. It is nothing more and nothing less than a plantation house, and we cannot look away from this, said Takis Karantonis. This simply cannot represent our government. Arlington's seal and logo must be replaced as soon as is reasonably possible, said Matt DeFerrante. Both are visible representations of a building that's principal legacy is as a slave plantation, and thus must be replaced to be consistent with the inclusive, diverse community we aspire to be. It's critical that we begin this community conversation, said Katie Crystal. I'd take perhaps a broader view that there are other symbols and names in our community that predate the Confederacy, that postdate the Confederacy, that are nonetheless symbols of systemic racism and oppression, said Christian Dorsey. To address one without addressing the other, to me, is beneath the capability of our community to actually move forward with a symbolic and a substantive approach to dealing with systemic racism. I hope people will be patient. County Board Chair Libby Garvey said that the county's logo will be the topic of further discussion during a future board meeting. Arlington is also planning community roundtable discussions on systemic racism and has kicked off an effort to rename Lee Highway.
Elsewhere, the county board has unanimously approved plans for a redesigned public park near the new HQ2 building belonging to Amazon. The site will be the present Metropolitan Park in Pentagon City. Amazon intends to pay the estimated cost of $14 million, along with the design by James Corner Field Operations. That company is headquartered in New York, with branches in Philadelphia, San Francisco, and even Shenzhen in China. But they have no presence in Arlington. We must note a continuing practice of large developers ignoring Arlington companies who might have provided similar services. Also, viewers and listeners who recall Amazon's announcement that the HQ2 building in Arlington would result in 25,000 new jobs might be interested in the company's updated hiring scorecard. As of this summer, Amazon announced the hiring of its 1,000th employee. Only 24,000 to go.
Finally, on the evening of Sunday, September 6th, the Arlington police located and arrested the aggressive cyclist who had reportedly been involved in at least 5 incidents along bike trails in Arlington. David Marlowe, 55, an Arlington resident, was charged with 1 count of robbery, 3 counts of assault and battery, 5 counts of indecent exposure, and 1 count of felony possession with the intent to distribute marijuana. The investigation is ongoing because there is the possibility that Mr. Marlowe had yet another confrontation on the Mount Vernon Trail. That's the news. Now it's time for Community Bulletin Board, or CBB.
Hi, and welcome to CBB. Here's a chance to learn about the development of commercial air flight. It's called Taking Flight, Yesterday and Today. It's about the growth of the airline industry, technological advances in air travel, and how the flying experience has changed. It's presented by Colonel Scott Willey, U.S. Air Force retired, senior docent with the National Air and Space Museum's UDVAR Hazy Center. You can RSVP to Sheila Butoff to receive a meeting link before the program. Her email address is sbudoff@arlingtonva.us. That's coming up on Thursday, September 24th from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. The registration number is 911-400-06. For registration assistance, you can email registration@arlingtonva.us or just call 703-228-4747. This next announcement looks like someone forgot to update their message. It says, "Enjoy an afternoon of bocce with friends." Well, if you show up in the afternoon, you'll miss it because it's actually coming up on Friday, September 25th from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock a.m. That's at Walter Reed Community Center and Park, 2909 16th Street South. The registration number is 911-700-04. And for registration assistance, again, you can email registration@arlingtonva.us or call 703-228-4747. Next up, there's a chance to join a group to learn about our world of wonders. You'll be able to see how wetlands are one of the most important ecosystems to the health of our planet and local environments, as well as how wetlands act as natural filters. Then you'll get to go out and visit wetlands. This event is for families with children ages 6 and up. You will need to register both children and adults because children must be accompanied by a registered adult. For more information, call 703-228-6535. You'll meet at the Long Branch Nature Center. Registration is required, and you can do that online or by calling 703-228-4747 and reference activity number 612950-L. That's coming up on Friday, September 25th from 11 o'clock a.m. to 12 o'clock noon at the Long Branch Nature Center at Glen Carlin Park. That's at 625 South Carlin Springs Road. Now here's a fun event for kids aged 6 to 10. It's called Dino Bone Sculpting. Paleontologists used art and science to theorize how dinosaurs may have looked by sculpting clay around fossils. You'll use the same process of sculpting clay on pictures of dinosaur skulls and skeletons to bring them back to life in art. For information, call 703-228-6535. You'll meet at the Long Branch Nature Center. Registration is required, so you can register online or call 703-228-4747. Make sure you mention activity number 612920-B. Now that's coming up on Saturday, September 26th from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock p.m. at Long Branch Nature Center at Glen Carlin Park. Again, that's 625 South Carlin Springs Road. Now, speaking of dinosaurs, it's time for 55 Plus News.
I heard that. Dinosaurs, huh? Well, what do you expect coming from a mammal? Anyway, let's get going with 55 plus walks at Fairlington. You can stay active with friendly walking companions you can explore Arlington walking trails in a safe, socially distant manner. This week's walk is at Fairlington. Now, registration is required, and those who register will receive specific instructions and meeting location details the day prior to the walk. The registration number is 911-109-07. And for registration assistance, you can email registration@arlingtonva.us, or you can call 703-228-4747. That's coming up on Wednesday, September 23rd from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. at Fairlington Community Center and Park, 3308 South Stafford Street. Next up, we got another scenic bike ride at National Harbor. These 55-plus rides are friendly and feature very scenic views along the Potomac River. That's what it says here. Join us as we explore National Harbor. The pace is casual, and there will be ample time for socializing with fellow riders. It's the journey, after all, as well as the destination. No one will be left behind, and we'll regroup several times to ensure everyone catches up and is safe. You'll meet at Bellhaven Park. Now that's coming up on Wednesday, September 23rd from 10 o'clock a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And you can register online or call 703-228-4747. Make sure you mention activity number 782001-02. Now, this is at the Bellhaven Park parking lot. That's at 401 George Washington Memorial Parkway in Alexandria, Virginia. Yep, for this one, you gotta leave Arlington. But hey, it's a bike ride. Next up, we got a painting demo. Community arts programmer Jen Droblian will present a detailed painting demonstration. A supply list and a picture to print will be provided with your registration confirmation, and you can pre-register using the number 911301. Now that's coming up on Monday, September 28th from 10:30 a.m. to 12 noon. To register, you can contact Elizabeth Poole at her email, which is epoole@arlingtonva.us. Finally, you can visit the Nature Center and take a 1 to 2 mile guided hike on the trails, possibly, mind you, possibly, to the Potomac River. Sturdy shoes are recommended. Heck, sturdy shoes are a good idea all the time in case you drop something, right? That's on Tuesday, September 29th from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock a.m. at Gulf Branch Nature Center and Park. That's at 3608 North Military Road. The registration number is 911-009-01. For registration assistance, you can email registration@arlingtonva.us or call 703-228-4747. And that's it from this here dinosaur doing the 55-plus news.
Now it's time for the feature we call Out and About. There is one piece of good news for people who enjoy the outdoors. The playground and athletic courts near the Lubber Run Community Center have opened. The opening took place without fanfare over the weekend of September 13th. The recreation area includes pickleball courts, volleyball courts, basketball courts, and a playground with group swings, a sandbox, and a large net climber. There are other playground features as well. There is also a wide manicured lawn where park users can picnic, toss a frisbee, or read a book, provided they watch out for stray frisbees. There is even a new garage indoors where people can park for free between 8 o'clock a.m. and 10:15 p.m. One other item. A pair of new hill slides, which are being touted as the first ever in Arlington. Well, the truth is that there were two other similar slides at Tuckahoe Park in the 1980s, but they were surrounded by rocks instead of the nice, soft, spongy material that the new slides feature. One other noteworthy item is that this park has two three-headed water fountains, both of which are in working order. I know I tested them. The opening of the actual recreation center itself has been delayed until next year, but something is better than nothing. On a less happy note, my trip to the new park was punctuated when I crossed Wilson Boulevard at George Mason Drive, both around 4:50 and at 5:20 p.m. The busy rush hour intersection was once again partly disrupted by a small group of people who had situated themselves at the northeast corner and who held up and waved signs instructing drivers to honk their horns. These half-dozen people, however well-intentioned, had apparently not considered the original purpose of automobile horns, to warn of danger. While the non-essential honking of horns at a busy intersection during rush hour is not completely the same as someone falsely shouting fire in a crowded theater, it is not all that different either. As we noted in a previous broadcast, someone's urgent honk might be ignored as a mere expression of support, and accident and injury could result. Furthermore, Virginia Code Section 46.2-1060 makes it, and I quote, unlawful for any person at any time to use a horn otherwise than as a reasonable warning. A 2019 article goes on to say, so you can get a ticket if you blow your horn just to get the car in front of you to move, or to hurry someone up, or to express displeasure at someone. The people who feel that there is something somehow heroic about encouraging others to violate a state law would do well to find some more constructive use of their time and energy to advance their cause. Other explorations in Arlington revealed little change. The playground at Banneker Park is still unfinished, and the water fountain is still inaccessible. The W&OD Bridge over Lee Highway is still closed, and the sign on Little Falls Road still displays a message about a detour from 8/24/2020 to 9/06/2020. One minor change is that the water fountain near the new roundabout on the Custis Spur no longer works as of Tuesday afternoon. To be fair, the signage around these projects references Fall 2020, which technically runs from September 22nd to December 21st. However, if the latter date is what ends up being used, the weather conditions won't favor the use of these resources. Time will tell. And that concludes this week's show. We will be back next week with more news from Arlington, along with some more on-the-ground observations. Meanwhile, be careful, be safe, and be well.
Some people think of cirrus as a place where people go to see clowns, acrobats, and wild animals, but only because they either aren't paying attention or are trying to make a joke. All jokes aside, this is actually a serious subject. Well, almost all jokes aside. When you get right down to it, you won't find any cirrus clouds down here because they are found high up in the sky. They're composed of ice crystals and look like little wisps of cloud that couldn't hurt anyone. But don't be fooled, there's business going on up there. They can form from tropical cyclones or thunderstorms. In fact, their presence in large numbers often indicates the approach of stormy weather. They have a couple of variants. One is cirrocumulus, which form rippling patterns. They don't usually last long, eventually transforming into regular cirrus clouds. Another variant is cirrostratus, which resemble a kind of milky sheen. When a warm front approaches, they transform into allostratus and rain soon follows. Cirrus clouds have been identified on the planet Mars. In 2008, the Martian lander Phoenix observed some cirrus clouds moving across the Martian sky and eventually a very thin mist of snow. Similar formations, although probably not water-based, have also been identified on Jupiter and Saturn. I'll introduce you to some other clouds later. Meanwhile, keep your eye on the sky and get to know your cloud. For a while there, people would sometimes talk about buying a flashy new car or a gigantic house in order to impress others. These things were known as status symbols. Well, here's a symbol everyone can afford. It's a stratus symbol, and it looks like this. I admit it's not very impressive, but at least it's free, and it's a symbol for a certain kind of cloud formation. You probably knew I'd get around to something like that sooner or later. A stratus cloud is a low-level cloud with horizontal layers. Seen from the ground, they sometimes just look like a gray sky. As with cumulus clouds, they can be formed from water droplets, supercooled water droplets, or ice crystals. They are not terribly dynamic in nature and are sometimes associated with prolonged periods of drizzle or light snow. There are some variants. Cirrostratus clouds are the higher level, ice crystal version, formed as warm, moist air rises to a colder temperature. They can produce the appearance of a halo around the moon. Allostratus clouds are the mid-level version, and they are heavier and more opaque. Nimbostratus clouds are found at a lower level and produce a heavier rain, but of shorter duration. Like the other stratus clouds, they appear as a steady gray, and they aren't much to look at. I'll introduce you to some other clouds later. Meanwhile, keep your eye on the sky and get to know your cloud.